Alright, coming up on their tails, time to shoot. I'm gonna fire my big old machine gun. Let's see how many hits I'm gonna get. Alright, up. Alright, well hey, that's all I needed was at least 2 hits, and one of those, that's a critical hit. That means it's 2 hits instead of 1. I only have 2 dice, so let's see. Oh no, you failed both of those. That means I got 3 total hits on your 2 hull point left vehicle. You know what that means. Oh, total wipeout. It's a wreck. It's gonna blow. Everybody get clear. Oh my god, the humanity. There's so much blood. There's so much fire. Oh my god, I'm on fire. You're not on fire. I'm on fire. I'm gonna die. Oh my god. Alright. Well, that was pretty exciting. So you are the winner. I'm going to now call you Jenny the Hammer Robinson in your red bat. Hey everyone. I was just
playtesting.
Yes, playtesting. I was playtesting Gaslands. Yes. Hold on a second. Okay. Hey everybody, this is John from Ettin Games and Hobbies. Welcome back to the Miniature Corner. Let's get right into it. All right, so today we're going to cover a couple topics. As usual, this is about miniature wargaming, and today we're going to talk about a new release coming up and an actual game that you might have saw me playtesting earlier. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Aegis Sigmar, and today I'm going to be putting my editor through the paces today. I'm probably going to owe him a drink on the company dime, of course. So our first thing we're going to talk about is Aegis Sigmar, 2nd edition. Their new release coming out is Soul Wars. Pre-orders for this game is going to go up on June 16th. Why I want to talk about this is Aegis Sigmar is the new version of the Warhammer Fantasy Battles that was going on for years, for about 20 years. And they had an End of Times event about 4 or 5 years ago. And it pretty much destroyed the world, destroyed number of known characters, famous characters throughout their whole universe. And if you know anything about the Warhammer Fantasy or even Warhammer 40,000, is they have a very rich history for all their characters, the world, the whole timeline. Now, Aegis Sigmar kind of relaunched the entire line. There's a whole different realms. Gods are popping up left and right. New gods, old gods are gone. And it's basically just one big war zone. And Aegis Sigmar, when it was released, I believe it was still under Tom Kirby's purview when he was still with the company. They were still operating under this whole assumption that they were mainly a model company, and they kind of made games on the side. Now, the issue with Aegis Sigmar when it first came out is that they didn't involve point system in the game. They just said, hey, just play with whatever you want, or use these goofy rules, or they had a power level system, but it wasn't what the fans wanted. And it really hurt the sales. And a lot of people turned away. There's even a famous video of a guy setting his army on fire. He was so upset with the release. Now, since then, Aegis Sigmar has seen 2 general handbooks, a whole plethora of releases that have actually fixed a lot of those issues, the gameplay and the point system to build your army. Games Workshop is under some new leadership that has kind of combined the very important aspect that this is a game system and a game company with creating some of the best looking models in the world. And so they finally decided to launch Age of Sigmar since they've already seen the increase in sales. People have been coming back to it. And yes, there are a couple fantasy-based games out there that people are playing, fantasy-based war games, but they still did not capture that feel that Age of Sigmar did. So I'm going to put up a graphic here. This is the Age of Sigmar, the kind of them talking about the announcement. This is the Soul Wars. And this here's the first army. I'm going to point over here. Hopefully the graphic pops up. The first army that you're going to get inside this box is going to be the new Stormcast Eternals. Every single one of these models is a brand new kit. And you're going to see kind couple of the units are the same because you're going to get multiples of them. A couple new sculpts. A couple people pointed out to me that they started seeing an increase in the female models, and which is kind of a big thing. Some people are kind of being negative, like, oh, Games Workshop's trying to be all inclusive or push some sort of gender agenda. But the reality is that war doesn't recognize any gender. And in Aegis Sigmar, it's men and women fighting side by side, whether they're high elves, dark elves, humans, the Stormcast Eternals. It doesn't matter. So they're there fighting side by side with each other. And for Games Workshop to include more female miniatures, that's really opening up a whole new realm of customers, hobbyists, painters, gamers, more people for you to participate against at events and tournaments and such. So we really need to be looking not at this as a negative point of view, but as a very positive point of view, because we're now getting a more inclusive group. We're actually expanding. Because if we don't expand in the miniature wargaming hobby, all we're going to do is we're going to become stagnant, and there's not going to be any upward growth. So these Stormcast Eternals are very important because it's allowing you to bring your daughter into play, or your wife or your girlfriend, because now they have something they can associate with. So that's the first half of the Age of Sigmar box set that's come out, the Soul Wars. You're also going to get a rule book in it. Now the other half, it's actually, you're going to get this next army up. This is the Night Haunts. Basically, it's a massive undead ghost army. Now the great thing about this is, if you are a type of person that does not like to paint a lot, this army is going to be very easy for you. Now I realize that the picture right here is showing a pretty awesome paint job. But if you want this full-on spectral army, you want it to be all spooky ghosts, and you want to save on paint time, they've got this new technical paint coming out. You can prime the miniatures white and then just slather on this new technical paint. You're going to have this spectacular looking ghostly army that you're going to be able to build and paint in record time. You could have that done in a few days if you need to spread it out over a couple days, or you can probably get it done in about 2 to 3 hours, I'm guessing. That's build time, priming, and painting, and then you're done. If you want to spruce it up a little bit, you can throw on some technical paint, the texture paint that Games Workshop puts out on the base. So now it's not just this plain black base. You can actually make it look like it's rubble or dirt, whatever you want it to look like. It's probably going to be one of the fastest armies that you'll ever be able to paint up. So this is like I said, this is the Undead army. We haven't really seen an Undead army in any of the Age of Sigmar boxes, and these are all new sculpts, by the way. All new. Not one of these are a repeat. Some of the miniatures are really spectacular looking. So I'm going to encourage you on June 16th, when you're able to, come onto the store, come down to Ettin Games and Hobbies, pre-order this product. We're going to, actually, probably about 3 or 4 days prior, probably about the 13th, we're going to start taking pre-orders so we can lock you in and get that game set aside for you, because this is going to sell fast. It might not sell as fast as, say, Warhammer 40,000, the 8th edition that came out the previous year, but it's going to sell really fast because it's a total revision of fixed all the problems that Age of Sigmar faced in the beginning. So I'm very excited about this. You should be excited about it because it's a good turning point for the fantasy role-playing from Games Workshop. All right, so let's really get in now to what you kind of saw earlier when I was playtesting. What I wanted to talk to this video about is Gaslands. Now, Gaslands, I'm going to put up a picture of here of the rule book. Gaslands is from Osprey Wargames. Actually, that's the publishing, the wargame branch of Osprey Publishing. They put out a number of miniature games and very cost-effective books. Now, with Osprey Games, they don't have this huge, massive line of miniatures, which is really good for you because you can pull from any line of miniatures that you have for any of their games, like Scrappers or Gaslands. And you don't have to go out and buy new miniatures. You just buy yourself a rule book. You already have dice. You already have measuring tapes. And this already has templates in it, so you don't even have to use your measuring tape for that. And then use whatever miniatures you have and sit there and play this game. And this book is actually very effective. It's $19, very cheap. That's your rule book. That's it. And we have one of our viewers is actually from the UK, so it's about £15, and which is once again very cheap compared to other miniature games. So essentially, this game, it's Car Wars. Like what Steve Jackson Games has something called Car Wars, or for you old timers, Games Workshop used to have something called Dark Future, and it's basically miniature combat with cars. So if you watch Road Warrior, any of the Road Warriors, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, any of those, any sort of Death Race 2000, the old Roger Corman version, or even the new updated one with Jason Statham in it, or pick any other sort of post-apocalyptic or dystopian era movie or television show where people are driving around shooting at each other with guns on their cars. Heck, you could even have a version of this that's all very similar to the Fast and the Furious. So you can actually really set the genre for you and your game with you and your buddies. Okay, so this game essentially revolves around you building up a team, equipping your team, your cars with a variety of weapons, and running around a tabletop with obstacles, buildings, gas cans, explosive barrels. Go all Mario Kart on this, and vying for control of the battlefield, just like any other miniature game, except this one, it's going to be probably one of the most cost-effective games you've ever had. The reason why I say that is you can actually get Matchbox cars and use it in this game, especially if you just want to test it out to see how it plays before you invest anything into it. Matchbox cars are the best way to go. Now, if you're going to be borrowing your daughter or your son's Matchbox cars, please return them. I'm going to save you a lot of trouble. Just return them after you're done playtesting, or playtest with them. You're going to have a lot of fun with this game. You can sit at the kitchen table and play this game in just a short bit of time. So once you got your Matchbox cars, you got some dice, and you got your rule book here, I'm going to go through basically kind of the stats for each vehicle, or what the vehicles have, kind of brief overview of how the game plays, and then a couple suggestions for you guys. All right, so the first thing that you're going to see with this game is that you do need some cars. And this could be your 20 millimeter cars. This is your Matchbox cars like I was talking about earlier. Or if you want to up the game, head over to Hobby Lobby or Michael's and pick yourself up one of those little miniature car kits that you can put together. They've got the snap fit ones or the more complex ones that are around $20. And those are 28 millimeter scale. If you're familiar with Warhammer 40,000 or perhaps Age of Sigmar or any of those style games, those are all 28 millimeter games. Bolt Action is another good example. So the rule book is going to go through the different types of vehicles. Now, every vehicle, just like any miniature game, is going to have a number of statistics. And this kind of helps you have fairness in the game and helps you determine what you can and cannot do. So very quick overview, and some of this is going to come up as I'm talking about the different steps during the game that you're going to be taking. Get a little bit more example of it. So we have everything from max gear. This is basically the current gear of the game. This kind of works like initiative. Each turn, depending on what gear you're in, will tell you when you get to act, how many times you get to act, all the way up through gear 1 through 6. This really comes into play for movement. Next thing is your handling. So when you're moving, there's a chance that you might wipe out or pull special maneuvers. Your handling determines how many dice that you get to roll for how many skid dice. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. I'm going to show you guys an example. Then your crew. Every vehicle's got a crew from 1. I think the most I saw was 8. That's on a bus. Yes, you can drive around like a little school bus with guns sticking out everywhere. All vehicles have a weight class, and weight classes are really come into play for collisions and damage. Then every vehicle has hull points. If you're familiar with any sort of miniature game, or any video game that you have hit points or wounds. Hull points determines if your vehicle is going to be wrecked or not. Build slots. This is the cool thing. So when you got your vehicle and you're sitting there decking it out, it tells you how many weapon upgrades or perks, whatnot, that you can actually add to your vehicle to really customize what that vehicle can or cannot do. And then the cost. This is kind of a neat little thing that they do. Everything in Gaslands operates on cans of gasoline. So other games are points or dollar values. This is cans of gasoline. So everything's got a cost of cans. Really just say points, but it's just a neat little thing that they throw in there. Now, when you are ready to play the game, let's go real quick. There's several different phases. There's the movement phase, the attack phase, and the wipeout phase. During each turn, which there's multiple turns for a scenario, there are 6 gear phases. Now each phase you get to activate as long as you have a vehicle that is in that gear phase or a higher one. Basically what I'm trying to get across here is that if you have a car that is in gear phase 2, that means you get to activate and you get to do something in gear 1. And then when you guys come back around to gear 2, you get to activate again. If you got a vehicle like a motorcycle or a high performance car that's in gear 6, that means you get to activate gears 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That means you're constantly activating. And here's a very, very important part about activating a vehicle. If during that game turn, anywhere from gears 1 through 6, you have a vehicle that can activate, that qualifies to activate, you must activate. You can't pass over. You have to do something with that vehicle. And you're going to see that through all this gameplay and all these different rules, is that this game is supposed to represent a high-speed game that's in constant motion. So there's just like a video game where you are, say you're driving around and you're shooting up people or driving away in a chase scene, or it's a racing game. It's in a constant state of motion. Now, if you're able to pull off a constant state of motion while you're on the tabletop, I would love to see a video of it. But in this case, you're going to be going through different steps, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and talk about the pole position. This is, every scenario is going to have determine who is in pole position at every turn. And this basically who goes first. And all this comes down to is a D6 roll, and to see who has the highest roll. All right, so now we're going to talk about activations. Whenever it's your turn, you're in the pole position. You have an opportunity to activate a vehicle that's in that gear for that turn. You're going to declare that qualifying vehicle, and you're going to activate it. Now, the activation, it's several steps, and some of this you're going to ignore. Some of it might apply to you. One of the steps, you might not even worry about this turn. So the first thing you're going to do, and this is the most important because this game is a race game. It is a car game where you're running around the battlefield or the racetrack or whatever you guys have constructed for your guys' game table, is the movement step. And the movement step, basically you're going to select a maneuver template. You're going to make a skid check, which is your handling, and then you're going to move your vehicle into its final position. Now this step is very involved, since this is one of the most critical parts of the game. I'm not going to go over every single detail because there's a lot to cover, and I don't want to bore you guys with reading this off to you when you could read it a little bit faster. So essentially during the movement phase, once you select your vehicle, you're going to select a maneuver template. So here's the first of the maneuver templates. You can see that we've got basically if you want to go a short distance, a medium distance, or a long distance. This other template right here, or right next to it, you'll see a large blast template, a slide template. Slide template will come into play a little bit later. And then here is the other templates that I'm going to talk about. This is the second group of templates. These are your turns, whether it's a kind of a gentle turn. You don't want to like get all crazy. It's a swerving if you're veering. There's also a hairpin turn, and a hard turn. You can see right there the different versions. And as you can see on these templates is that it has the different 1 through 6 gears, and that's what gear you're allowed to be in to execute these maneuvers. So, and then you see these little, it looks like a little indentation in each of these. That is where you're going to be putting the slide count template. I'll get into that in just a moment. So whenever you're ready to select your maneuver template, something you need to pay attention to, and this is very important, and this is both on you and your opponent or opponents if you're doing a big team game, is once you touch that template, you nudge it, you put your finger on it, it doesn't matter. As soon as you touch it, and this is one of the rules in the game, this is very important, that's the maneuver. There's no changing. There's like, oh, that's not the one I wanted. You're doing it because it's supposed to represent that split second decision making that you're doing while you're driving. And so it's on you and your opponents to call you out, say, oh, that's the one you chose. Kind of like you're playing chess. If you take your hand off that chess piece, that's it. That maneuver is done. So be very careful when you're selecting your maneuver template. Then you're going to place a maneuver template down, and you're going to make a skid check. Now, I'm going to put up the skid check here. So this is the skid check chart. If you don't have the special dice, which it shows the different icons here, you can actually just use a D6. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you an example of what the skid check chart, I know you can read it, just follow along with me. So here is an example. All right. So following this example, as you can see here, I've rolled a 1. That's the little skull symbol for my dice. That means I automatically gain a hazard token. The 2 means I'm going to spin, and that's rotate on the spot up to 90 degrees, and I'm going to get a hazard token. And then these other dice, on a 4, 5, or a 6, these are really the best results, because I can either choose to cancel a result, I can stick shift up or down. That's your changing from gear, say 1 to 2, or go from 4 back down to 3. And you can remove a hazard token. So in this case, I don't want any of these negatives. So what I'm going to do is use one of my shifts, that's the 5, to remove the hazard dice, that's the 1. Then I'm going to sit here and we're going to cancel that other one, the 2, so I'm not going to spin. And then my last dice that I'm going to have, that's going to be shift. I want to be able to go a little bit faster in my following turn, so I'm going to go ahead and shift up. So that's just basically an example of what the dice rolls for skid control are. And it's very important that you pay attention to what type of maneuver you're going to be pulling off, because that's going to help you be successful when you're driving around the tabletop, especially if you're in a higher gear. Then you're going to be trying to think about 2 or 3 moves ahead of the current move. All right, so that's the skid check. Once that is done, once you've figured out what you're going to do, whatever the results are, then you're going to apply those results. So if you got any hazards, which I'm going to get to in just a moment, if you're going to slide or if you're going to spin, you're going to be applying those, you're going to gain those tokens for those different results. If you slide, then you're going to take that slide token that I showed earlier, or the slide template, and you're going to put it in that little slot right next to, right on that other whatever template you're using. And that's going to show you where the final position of your vehicle is going to be. Once you've applied everything, you're going to go ahead and put your vehicle in the final position, but you're not done yet. If you happen to collide with another vehicle or an obstacle, that's going to result in a collision. And collisions, as you can imagine, is bad. You could end up flipping your car, causing damage, or just automatically stopping, and you can't go any further. And after you've determined if you had a collision, if you had a spin dice, this is where you will actually, after you've already determined your final position, you're going to go ahead and resolve that spin. That's moving your vehicle up to 90 degrees in either direction. Totally up to you. Now, whenever you move that vehicle up into a different direction, if you come into contact with another vehicle or a obstacle, once again, you have to go right to the collision because you might have hit something, you might have blown something up, or it might have gotten wrecked. So you need to be very careful when you do that. All right. So that's what you do for the movement activation. Now, the other thing that you get to do for activation is the attack phase. And this is the kind of the cool phase because all those big guns that you mounted up on your vehicle that we're going to get into, that this is that time to activate it. Now, every vehicle or every weapon has a number of dice that you're going to roll to make your attack. And this is the kind of the cool part. So every vehicle has a crew. And every crew member, at the very least, has a handgun. This could be a pistol, shotgun, assault rifle. Could be a bow and arrow for all I know. And it depends on what you want to model it as. So you're going to check to see if you're distracted. And what this means is did you just run into a vehicle or a building or something? If you did, you're going to be distracted and you have to deal with that. You're not going to be able to make any shooting attacks until you can get moving again. So if, let's say you're not distracted, which is the cool one, you're going to see how many crew members you have in your vehicle, how many weapons, and you're going to assign those crew members to those weapons, and you're going to actually start making your attack rolls. Now you need to declare a target, see who's in your line of sight, see if they're in range, just like any other game, see if they happen to have cover. Now here's the part that you guys are kind of expecting or waiting for, is that you're going to make your attack rolls. Now, every weapon, everything from the handgun to the grenades, the 120 millimeter cannon, yes, you can get a 120 millimeter cannon on your car. It can happen. To even oil slicks, caltrip droppers. I mean, if you can think about it and have seen it in a movie, you can it's probably in the game here. So every weapon has a number of dice associated with its attack value. So let's say handgun, it's a simple D6. A heavy machine gun, it's 3D6. If you happen to have a 120 millimeter cannon, that's 8D6. And you're going to roll these dice. Every 1, 2, or 3 is considered a miss. 4, 5, and 6 are considered hits. 6s, though, particularly, are critical hits. They actually count as 2 hits. So that's not too good if you're getting hit with a 128 or 120 millimeter cannon. So your opponent, though, has an opportunity to avoid those attacks. It's not a very good opportunity, but they can do it. So the total number of attacks that they can try to avoid is they can make an evade attempt, and that's equal to the vehicle's current gear. So if you have gear, like 2 or 3 pieces of gear, you're going to be able to get that many dice. So a roll of a 6 on that dice is a success and cancels 1 hit only. You can never make more than 1 evade attempt in a single movement. That's something to pay attention to. So if you only are stuck in gear 1, you're being attacked, you're only going to be able to evade 1 attack that turn. So you need to really pay attention and be very cautious about when you're evading, when not to evade. If you're getting hit with a handgun, probably not evade. You're getting hit by a 120 millimeter cannon, you're going to want to evade. All right. So besides being shot at by the different weapons, make sure you're in the right arc. You can drop weapons. That's like you're throwing a grenade or Molotov cocktails out the window. And another thing about weapons I should really point out is your firing arcs. So when you're building these vehicles and you're adding the weapons, every weapon is going to have a position that they're facing. So it could be in the rear, the right or left side, or the front. You're going to need to nominate that. Unless you pay for an upgrade for the turret that gives you a 360-degree firing arc, which doesn't cost it costs a lot of gas. It's like times 3 for the times 3 of the weapon cost, but it doesn't take up any build slots. So it's really cool to have a turret, but it's going to be very costly. So just try to be very frugal sometimes with your vehicles whenever you're putting that on, or just at least if you're going to be having all these weapons on the front arc or the rear arc, you're going to need to make sure you're paying attention to your position when you're driving around trying to attack everybody else. All right, so here's the thing is that we just went through the attacks, and if your opponent didn't evade all the attacks or none at all, every successful hit that you get, it's going to take away one hull point, one simple hull point. Once all the hull points are gone, that vehicle goes to wrecked. Now, there's a couple things that are going to happen with wreck. That vehicle that gets wrecked you're going to put the short movement template down on there, and they're going to move that far forward. You're going to see if they collide with anything, just like regular movement phase. And then you're going to take off all their hazard tokens, put them in gear 1, and it's going to become a wreck. Now, there's a chance that those vehicles can explode. And if they do explode, they explode in a big radius. So this is not very good if you are nearby. So the explosion, you're going to roll a d6 for that vehicle. And if it comes up as a 6, then that vehicle is going to explode. There are a couple factors that could make that really explode. So if you have any particular weapon, say the 120 millimeter cannon, that has ammo counters on it, you have to add, for every ammo counter, you have to add to that dice roll. So you could be a 3 and you have 3 ammo counters left. Well, now you just rolled that 6. Now your vehicle is going to blow up. And whenever those vehicles explode, each vehicle in medium range of the exploding vehicle will take damage, or has a chance to take damage. So you need to really be careful when you're driving up on vehicles and trying to ram them or shoot them at close range, because if they explode, you are probably going to lose your vehicle as well. All right, so the last step that I'm going to talk about is the wipeout step. And this may or may not happen. So the wipeout step is, I mentioned earlier that you can get some hazard tokens while you're driving around. Those hazard tokens, once you get 6 of these guys, this means you're going to suffer a wipeout. So if vehicle suffers a wipeout, you're going to perform a number of steps. The biggest thing to see is, are you going to flip over? You're going to, if you do happen to flip over, you're going to suffer 2 automatic hits. You're not going to be able to evade that. You're going to move forward in a very straight line and come to a rest, or not come to a rest, but you're going to drop down 1 gear, but the good thing is all your hazard tokens are gone. However, you've flipped over, and which could cause you to either hit an obstruction, collide with another vehicle, or you could take enough damage where you blow up. That's not good, especially if you're down to your last vehicle. You don't, just like any sort of wreck that you see out on the highway or seen on some videos online, getting in a wreck is not good, especially if you blow up. All right, so that's a very brief overview of how to play the game. But how do we get to that point where you have your cars and you can deck them out with your guns? What kind of guns can we get? So I'm going to go over kind of basically your first game. And this is like creating your team, choosing sponsors. Yes, you can have a team sponsor, team size, whatnot, and walk into scenarios. So let's get into that right now. All right, so your first game and follow-on games. So there's another things to pay attention to when you're doing Gaslands. You're going to create your team, and this is basically, if you're familiar with miniature wargaming, this is building your army list, your crew, your gang, whatever phrase you want to use for whatever game that you have. But this is basically building a team. You are going to choose a sponsor. You're going to choose your team size. The sponsor part, let me drop back to that real quick. The sponsors can grant you certain perks, and they also help you determine your different driver perks that you can have for your vehicles. So the sponsors are really cool, and we'll get into their funny names in a bit. The team size, and this is some of you might be waiting for, is how big of a game, point size, to make it kind of like matched play if you're familiar with Warhammer 40,000. Basically, the team size, the game size, it's going back to the whole cans of gasoline or cans, anywhere from 25 to 100. The average or the standard team size is 50 for an individual. Now, you can go beyond 100 cans, but be prepared for a much longer game. All right. So once you've got your team size and your game size set aside, it's time to actually build your vehicle. And I'm not going to go through all these, but you have everything from bikes to performance cars like your Maseratis. Um, you have tractors, buses, war rigs. Your war rigs, that's your big semi trucks, tanks, helicopters. There's a lot that you get to be able to do here. It has now each of these vehicles, as you're going to see, as you're flipping through the rule book, is they've got the vehicle type, their weight class, which I talked about earlier. That's your lightweight, your middleweight, and your heavyweight vehicles. And that weight class just mainly comes into play whenever you have a collision or really for an explosion, because that's going to tell you how big of an explosion you're going to have. Now, every vehicle, as I mentioned in the beginning, they have hull points. So anywhere from 4 hull points for a bike all the way up to 20 for a tank. Everything's got handling. This is the number of dice that you're going to roll for that skid check we went over earlier. Like an example, a bike has a 5, all the way down to the bus, as you can imagine, is a 2. So not a lot of maneuverability there. Now, then the next thing you got is your max gear. This is how fast your vehicle is going to be able to get up to. Bikes are at 6 as an example. To lowest is a tank at a 3. That means you can only get up to gear 3 in your vehicle. That means you'll be able to activate on gears 1, 2, and 3. Then you got your build slots. Now this is where you're going to be adding in your perks and your weapons, the whole works. This is where you really deck out your vehicle. Your bikes, only 1 slot. No big surprise there. You're not going to be able to really get around with too many things on your vehicle. So you can also go up to, say, a performance car. That's 2. The biggest one is the war rig at 5 build slots. It means you can get a lot of stuff on there and a lot of perks. Crew size is your next little thing. Next statistic on there. Bikes are at 1. No big surprise. Yes, I know you can ride Dutch or you can have a sidecar, but for this, they actually go into trikes and bikes with sidecars. That's a crew of 2. Crews of 1 for performance cars. Buses and coach, you can have a crew of 8. So there's a lot that you can go there. Now the cost, we talked about that earlier. That's how many cans of gas or points that you're going to be spending on that vehicle. Bikes are at 5. You can get up to 30 for a bus or coach, or tanks can be at 40. So once you figure out what type of vehicle that you want to start off with, and you might be able to squeeze in a couple vehicles if you're very frugal with the type of cars that you're taking, how many points that you have, and what type of weapons you want to get. So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses for having just one big vehicle decked out versus a couple smaller ones decked out with 1 or 2 guns. So your weapons are everything from handguns, which cost you nothing. There's no build slots assigned to it. Every crew member that you have in your vehicle, that includes the driver, has a handgun. This is your shotguns, pistols, bow and arrow. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it's called as long as it just fits that category. And I mentioned earlier about the attacks. Like a handgun only has 1d6 attack. That's 1 6-sider for its attack value. Heavy machine guns, 3d6, but they're 1 build slot. Now, all these vehicles, all these weapons tell you if it's a shooting type, if it's a drop type, or a smash type. The drop types are like those grenades or the oil slicks. Exploding rams would be your smash types of attacks. And then everything on here, they all have their own ranges. Everything from short range up to smash range, which is basically running into a vehicle. There are a number of build slots. If they have any special rules, and as kind of talked about earlier, if your vehicle's got, or your weapon has any ammo counters for the explosion results, this is where they'll have the special rules. And then they got the associated cost for each of those weapons, the cost in points or cans of gas. Then there's a bunch of upgrades that you can take, from turret mounting for your weapons, to nitro boosters, extra armor, extra crew members. These are things that you have to take into account. So now, what's the difference between all the different vehicle types? You're going to really have to go through that because there's 12 different vehicle types. Every vehicle type, though, with the exception of a basic car, a pickup truck, bus, or a coach, those four right there, the car, pickup truck, bus, or a coach, they do not have special rules. Everything else has a special rule of some sort. Most of them, as I'm looking through it, have been positive. I haven't seen any sort of negative bonuses or negative aspects of the different vehicles. All right, so once you've figured out what the vehicle you want, you've bought your weapons, then you're actually ready to play. Now there are different types of gameplay that you can do. They've got 6 different scenarios in here. If you go to gaslands.com, and I'll get to that in a little bit, they have other scenarios that you can do. Something that you can also do besides just those scenarios, which is everything from Monster Truck Smash to Death Race to Zombie Bash, is the team game. This is where this works really well with 4 teams of 2 players, and each with a single vehicle. Each player with a single vehicle. That game you're going to spend basically 50 points or 50 cans, or if you guys want to go bigger or smaller, on your own individual crew. And then you guys basically have one big smash 'em up demolition derby with 50 caliber machine guns and rocket launchers on your Maseratis or monster trucks. So once you guys figure out what type of game you want to play, every scenario has how you set it up, the teams, pole position, starting grid, all the special rules for that scenario, including the victory conditions. So that once again depends on what type of scenario. And like I've mentioned in other game videos, you could just have a smash 'em up where you guys just sit there, race across the tabletop, whether it's you and your kids or you and your buddies, and you guys just battle it out. Or you guys could be racing around a track and going with other different types of victory conditions. It's totally up to you. Just make sure that you guys have those victory conditions and the scenario set up prior to playing the game, of course. Now, the advanced rules, it's not that they're more difficult, it's just more stuff for you to pay attention to. So one of the first ones is the sponsors, which I mentioned earlier. Now, these are not required for you to play the game. They actually just kind of enhance the game for you. Each sponsor has their own associated perks. So here's an example of a couple of the different sponsors. You have the Rutherfords, the Miyazakis, the Mishkins, the Wardens, Slime, Idris. These are some of the different sponsors that you can actually assign to your team and pick up those perks. But they also have, depending on which sponsor you take, have an associated driver perk that you can pick up for your own vehicle, for each of your vehicles. And this is everything from being able to do a boarding party, power slides, stunt driving, a slipstream. There's a lot of stuff that you can do here with your vehicles and your sponsors. Another one of the advanced rules is the war rig. Now, a war rig is a massive vehicle and behaves quite differently than the other vehicles. And this mainly you're adding on a trailer onto the cab. And this could make for some interesting modeling projects for yourself, but also gameplay wise, you have different type of templates and a little bit more advanced rules. That's something that you need to take into consideration. Another one is the seasons. If you want to, because a lot of you guys like to do league play, so you guys that are playing like Saga, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, Guild Ball, you guys like your league play, the Gaslands has the escalating season. And it's basically your team start at a certain amount of gas cans or points, and you work your way up with those vehicles. Or if they blow up or something, you need to get more vehicles. It's essentially league play to watch the advancement of your team. Then they have everything from escalating seasons to championship seasons to special events. It's essentially league play, or organized play, as some people like to call it. One of the coolest advanced rules that I like on here is the audience votes. Since this whole thing is supposed to take place like on a TV show, the audience votes is they have a certain conditions, and once you meet these certain conditions, you get an audience vote. So this could be like one of your vehicles becomes wrecked, or you start a turn without any active vehicles. You can actually get audience votes. Now these audience votes, you can spend them on special abilities. Like one I like is the respawn. If you have no vehicles currently in play, you can select one of those vehicles that you lost control of or wrecked and activate it again. And now it's running around the tabletop. You can reload. You can, another good one is executive intervention. You can select one of your vehicles that you don't control. That vehicle immediately gains hazard tokens until it has 5 hazard tokens. I mean, there's a lot that you can do with those audience votes, and it adds an extra element. And as they put it, it is a positive in-game handicap system. And it kind of plays onto that whole aspect that this is supposed to be like a TV show. So if you've seen any of the versions of Death Race 2000 or any of the follow-on Death Races, you will have an idea of what I mean by it's basically a big TV show, and watching people run around in demolition derby with rockets and machine guns trying to blow each other up and try to win the crown at the end of the day. Especially if you are at the point where you have this massive armies for all your different games, which are great and fun to play, but you need a break from, especially tournament season starting to wind down for, say, Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar. I think season 9 is about almost halfway done or past the halfway mark for Infinity. Things are going to start winding down. So, afterthoughts. Let's talk about that. All right, so first thing for organized play, I'm going to go to the gaslands.com page in just a moment and kind of walk you through it. Organized play is probably, that's like going to be your tournaments. It's going to be your escalation leagues or your championship leagues, whatever you got going on there. It's basically just establishing a set number of scenarios. It could be a narrative, anything just to have a series of games played out by you and your buddies. All right. Before we get into this, I'm going to recommend that you head over to Ettin Games and Hobbies as soon as you get a chance and pick up a copy of Gaslands. As I said before, it's a ridiculously cheap book, $19. You pick up a couple Matchbox cars if you don't own any, or if your kids don't have any, or you don't have any in your junk drawer in the kitchen like some of us do. Then just go to Walmart or Target or something, spend $5 on a 5-pack of cards like I did. And so now you spent $25 in this game. We know you got dice. But go to your local game store. Go to Ettin Games and Hobbies. Really support your friendly local game store, because these are the places that are going to carry the games in the area for you. They are going to have the places for you to come into play, and they're going to support your hobby because you're supporting them. And it really helps out build up that larger community, because without these stores, you're not going to have anywhere to go to. So definitely get in there. And I understand some people like to get on and get a PDF copy. I've mentioned this before. Having a PDF copy is great. Especially, I like having a PDF copy for all my games for when I'm traveling, especially when I'm on an airplane or I'm in airports and I'm sitting around waiting for the next flight, or it's a 3.5-hour flight to Vegas. I need something to read. But having a physical copy of the rulebook, not an electronic one, is a lot faster to get through than the electronic copy, because then you got to scroll up and down, zoom in and out. But if you have that physical copy with you, when you go to play the game, it's available for you right away. So right now I'm at the gaslands.com page, and as you can see here, they talk about the game. They got some downloads. Talk about the playtesters, the web store, and everything. But the one I want to hit at it right now is the downloads. As you can see here, is they got a number of free downloads. I'm not going to go through every single one, but you can see where you got the maneuver templates that you can download and make printed copies of. There's the rules. Yes, they don't have a free copy of the rules. You would have to purchase it. Just go to Ettin Games and Hobbies, pick it up. Quick reference chart, FAQ, organized The other thing I like is that there's organized play rules. They're in their own beta version right now, but I still recommend going to it and checking it out. Now the extras I think is really neat is they have special prize generator for Saturday Night Live, the list builder, which is kind of a neat way of building your cars if you don't want to sit there with pen and paper, and then the Billboard posters I thought was really cool. You can actually print these off, put them on some cardboard, and build a little stand and put them on your tabletop. Kind of add some scenery if you don't want to sit there and put buildings and whatnot on there. So this is actually a pretty good resource website for anybody that's wanting to play Gaslands. And kind of, I want to say that these guys put out a really good book. As I mentioned earlier, there's a couple other games that this is kind of based on, but Mike Hutchinson, he's the author of it. He got together with a couple of guys, like one of the original concept creator was John Brindley and Glenn Ford, and anybody that worked over at Games Workshop with the Dark Future game, like Gap Thorpe, they all had kind of a hand in getting this game together, and of course all the play testers, and they put together really a particular book, good book here for this Gaslands, and especially with the price of it, what you need to get involved. You don't have to buy this huge collection of miniatures. This is actually an outstanding product. You need a game that you can just kick back and play and not get too serious with, or you want to play a game with your kids, your wife, and they might kind of make fun of you a little bit for playing with Matchbox cards, but then you can always upgrade. Like I said before, you got those model car kits at Hobby Lobby and Michael's, and I think maybe Walmart still carries those. Those are great if you want to upscale and you really want to deck out your cars. But if you don't want to go that route, you can easily pick up these Matchbox cars. If you got any bits laying around, if you have other miniature games, get some of your old guns from the different miniatures and just glue them on like I did just to play test. And you can just sit there and just have some goofy fun and not really be too serious with this game, especially when you just run around with Matchbox cars. This is a real ideal game to kick back and relax. So I always try to leave off, kind of give you guys an update on what's coming up for Ettin Games and Hobbies, or kind of local games going on. So Free RPG Day is coming up on June 16th. You can go to our Facebook page, check out the events, and sign up for any of the different games that we got going on throughout the day, anywhere from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. We got a number of free RPGs going on. We have some of the best game masters or dungeon masters that are going to be hosting these games. These are some of the best people in Houston. A lot of them are from actually our first Iron DM challenge that we had a few weeks ago. And if you're participating in Free RPG Day, we have a number of giveaways that are actually modules or playtests or kind of sneak peeks at some of the upcoming RPGs, kind of some door prizes. That's on June 16th, so come on in, beat the heat, because it's going to be hot here in Houston. Just come on in and play some games and have some fun. Ettin Games and Hobbies is one of the proud sponsors for Warzone Houston. That's July 7th and 8th. At the Wyndham and the Wyndham Hotel at the Energy Corridor. If you want to see what's going on at Warzone Houston, head over to warzonehouston.com, check out our list of events, check out the scheduling, and sign up for one of them. We've got the Warhammer 40,000 tournament going on for 8th edition. This is an ITC major, so if you're chasing your points for the ITC to be the top player and maybe go to Las Vegas Open with those points and try to be the top player in either your faction or the nation, this is an excellent opportunity to test that out. There's going to be a Horus Heresy narrative event. This is the Path to Terra. It's a series of games over 2 days where what's affecting one scenario can affect the next scenario, and is basically an escalating set of scenarios on different tables between different factions. Then we have a Saga Grand Melee. There's only a few actual Grand Melees in the US, and we are now one of them. So if you are a Saga player, get signed up and get in here and play. Then we also have Season 9 ITS for Infinity. This is an official sanctioned event We've got the kits for it. We got tons of prize support for it. Sign up, come on out and play. And lastly, we're doing the first Houston championship for Spire. This is one of those games from Games Workshop where it's not just a miniature game. They kind of revolutionized how they do things. This is a card game, a deck building game, and a miniature game all combined together. It's arena combat, not where you need hundreds of models. You're just going to pick one little warband that they've got set aside, anywhere from 3 to 5 models, and battle it out in a very small arena against your opponent. And that's going to be the Houston Championship for Spire. All these are going to be held at Warzone Houston, July 7th and 8th. Head over to our website, check it out, sign up, and join the fun. All right. So once again, I'm John with Ettin Games and Hobbies Miniature Corner. We'll see you next time.